Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to you, wherever you are in the world. I am Tigress Osborne. I'm the chair of the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, and you are joining us today for the NAAFA webinar series. We are super excited. I'm already laughing because Howie's so funny. We're super excited to be joined today by our very special guest, Howie Miller, who's going to talk to us about Indigenous comedy and laughing for liberation. Hi, Howie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm Fan Wackwick. I'm awesome. I'm amazed. I'm amazing. I'm in such a good mood, and I'm so looking forward to this.
Yay. Well, before we dive in with Howie, we're just going to give you a little bit of info about NAAFA for those of you who are new to us. And I want to acknowledge our friends and colleagues from Pro Bono ASL. We have Dee and Neil here with us today offering sign language interpreting, American Sign Language interpreting. And I also want to tell you about two things we're going to be adding to our webinars from here on out. First of all, this is Indigenous Heritage Month in the United States, as you hopefully already know and have been observing and celebrating and learning. And I want to share a moment of learning, my personal learning with you all about the importance of land acknowledgements. NAAFA has done land acknowledgements in the past for live and in-person events, but as the host of the webinar series, I really had not made the connection to how, even though I am not in a physical space with you all, I am still in a physical space, and I am a guest on this physical space. So I am coming to you from the Phoenix, Arizona greater area, and where the original peoples of my specific location were the O'odham people. And I want to encourage those of you who are here with us in the chat live to share if you know where you know where you're from, but like whose land is it? And if you don't know that, there are resources available under our anti-racism resources at NAAFA.org that can help you learn more about land acknowledgement and who the land you are a guest on belongs to, if you are one of those guests. Of course, to our indigenous participants, we are glad to have you with us, and thank you for allowing us to be here. I also want to add an element. I'm aware that many of our viewers are actually listeners, and they, for a wide variety of reasons, are not seeing us on camera. So I want to orient our webinars from here on out with a little bit of a visual description for people who are tuning in or who are reading the transcript. Those of us who were here in person got to see each other, or those of us who were here live got to see each other. And so what you're seeing, if you're not seeing me, what the people who are seeing me are seeing is a light-skinned Black American woman, a fat woman with big fluffy hair and glasses. I'm in a room with a blue background with the NAAFA logos on the wall behind me. So thank you for those couple of moments for teachable moments. And again, if you're new to NAAFA, we are a 52-year-old fat rights organization that has been working towards equality at every size through advocacy, education, and support of fat people since 1969. We make these offerings free to the community, and if that is something you would want to support, you can do that at naafa.org, NAAFA.org/donate. Now, Howie Miller is one of the funniest corporate and club comedians in North America. He is a First Nations descendant of the Cree Nation and was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. His quick wit and unique point of view on multi-ethnic stereotypes is enjoyed by all audiences. This has garnered Howie numerous television appearances and placed him in great demand on the corporate comedy circuit. Howie's hilarious routine, mixed with stellar impressions, has audiences laughing from start to finish. Howie has recently been featured on American television in the Showtime special No Reservations Needed, which some of you may have seen clips from in our NAAFA newsletter this month, and has made numerous appearances on Canadian television, including the CBC comedy specials, Winnipeg Comedy Festival, Welcome to Turtle Island 1 and 2, CBC's Alberta Comedy Spectacular, and in his own half-hour special, Comedy Now Presents Howie Miller. He can also be heard on CBC's popular radio show, The Debaters. In 2010, Howie joined the Pow Wow Comedy Jam, and since then, they have received acclaim all over the US, earning Entertainer of the Year honors in 2001 by the National Indian Gaming Association and Comedic Performance of the Year at the National Indigenous Awards in New Mexico in 2012. Howie is an accomplished comedic actor and writer and has been nominated for a Gemini Award, a Canadian Comedy Award, and a Canadian Screen Award for his writing and acting in the sketch comedy show, caution, may contain nuts. Friends of all gens, please welcome Howie Miller to the NAAFA webinar series. Hi, Howie.
Greetings, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, morning, lunch, noon, wherever you are, nap, midnight. I don't know what's going on, but I'm here, and I'm happy to be here. I should let you know that I'm an extremely gorgeous Adonis Indigenous man, North American, Indian, native, however you want to call me, short hair, gorgeous bowling shirt wearing guy in front of a green screen. That's what I look like. So if you can't see me, you're missing out.
You're missing out, people. That's why we brought him here, because he's a centerfold.
Yes, I should also go on record as saying I realize that the camera adds 10 pounds, and I'm not sure how many cameras are on me right now, but I look very large, larger than I do in normal C.
Well, you're in good company for a place where the camera adds pounds, because this is a place where we don't care if that camera adds pounds.
I love it. The more, the merrier.
How do you feel about the word fat, Howie? We've been using fat for, 5 decades as part of the name of our organization. How do you feel about it?
I think it's dope. I've never had a problem with the word fat or calling myself fat. I'm happy the way I am. I tried to get in shape. I chose the shape of an apple, so that makes me happy. And you know what? They can say it's jolly or whatever, and they can say I don't care, but I do care. I mean, I'm a healthy person, but I'm just larger. So I'm just one of those people that's larger. We come in all different shapes and sizes and colors and creeds and yeah. So we should rejoice in that fact. And if one of them is called fat, then great. I'll wear that badge with honor.
How does it affect you in your work as a stand-up comic?
How does it affect me? Now, the only way it really affects me is traveling. Now, I think it's there's a jazz singer in Canada. Her name was Diana Krall, and she's a recording artist, and she's very well known. And she was quoted as somebody asked her what's the worst part about being on stage, or worst part of performing. I think that's the question. And her answer was a very smart answer, because she said, there's nothing wrong with performing. Performing is fun. It's the part of the job is traveling, getting into cabs, getting to airports at really early hours, waiting for planes, waiting for late planes or canceled flights, waiting in airports, waiting in train stations, waiting in bus stations, waiting in a hotel room, all the stuff you do around the actual performance. That's the work. The performance, when I'm on stage, that's that magical hour of having fun and a wonderful time. So that's not work at all. I love that part. Now, where my size gets intrusive is probably, I'm going to say, flights. Now, flights have always been a problem. For one, I think to save on a budget, I think all the airlines, what they're doing is their seatbelt material, they're using less of it. Because as I get older, I notice that it's harder and harder for me to put the seatbelt on. And I don't know if you've ever had to ask for the extender, but I always love asking for the extender, and I'll do it in such a way where it appears that I'm embarrassed about it. So the flight, I'll ding the buzzer, and they'll come to me, the flight attendant, and I'll say, "Excuse me, can I get the extender?" And I'll do the sign language, the lame, people who don't know sign language. I'll get the extender. Can I get the extender? And I'll be whispering, the extender. And they'll have to go, "Excuse me, sir, what? And I'll go, "Can I get the extender?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." And then they always have to go to like the back of the plane and call up to the front And they're like, yeah, Earl, can we get the extender to seat 24A? 24A, the real fat guy needs the extender. Better bring him two. So yeah, I find flying is really, because then of course I have to sit like this. If I'm in a middle seat, you have to, I don't like my whole bodice exploring other people's space. So I've got to sit tight like this for however long the flight is. And since you're heavier, your weight is drawn towards your butt where you're sitting. So that's, unless the seat's really, people have those donuts, those half donuts around their necks. I always put it under my ass just so it's a little because it's not going to fit around my neck anyways. Let's be honest, right? It's just going to look
right. At this point, I have a built-in donut around.
Yeah, I've got a built-in relaxed thing. I can just squat my head down. There we go. And now I don't need the donut around my neck. So, but yeah, flying is probably the worst part. Anything else, cars and trains and whatnot, they're fine. But flying can suck sometimes.
What about on stage? You've talked, and I want to hear more from you about what it means to be Indigenous on stage. But while we're on the subject of being a fat performer, what about on stage? I mean, we all know that there are other fat comedians, but what does it mean in your career? Does it change the way you interact with audiences or the way they interact with you? Does it change what you get booked for? Tell us a little bit about that.
Since comedy for me it relies pretty much on your sense of humor, and solely on that. If you're not funny, if you're funny or not, it's irrelevant what you look like, as far as I'm concerned. And that's how I feel it. That's how I've gone into every show. It doesn't matter what I look like, and I'll make fun of how I look. Like, for instance, if there's a microphone stand in front of me, I'll always move the microphone stand and tell people I'm just moving that out of the way so you can see me better. Because obviously you're going to see the microphone stand's not going to hide me at all, right? So I'll just make light of the fact that, yes, I'm a larger person. Here comes some larger person jokes. So just let's all relax and get on the same page with, yeah, I realize how big I am. You don't have to tell me. And I usually find out that if I can sort of be self-deprecating a little bit, then the hecklers don't have anything to say to me, because I rarely get heckled anyways, because they're like, hey, oh, wait a minute, he already called himself that. I don't have to say anything, right?
Right.
And as far as being Indigenous on stage, that's an honor. That's a huge honor to me, because I've always looked at it as there's only a handful of us right now. The great Charlie Hill, who was a personal friend of mine, and it felt like we toured up until his last kind of days there, but it was always special to be with him, because he was like the icon, the legend, the hero that opened all the doors, the teepee flaps, if you were, for all of us Indigenous entertainers to take the stage. And to see him in the 70s on the Richard Pryor show, and then later on when he was writing for a whole bunch of sitcoms and whatnot, and what he did is he not only opened the doors, but he left the doors open for everybody. He was always holding the door open, saying, come on, guys, come this way, come this way, come this way. So I take being Indigenous on stage as an honor, and something that I have to live up to. There's a certain amount of responsibility that I feel I need to have. And again, handing down that tradition of holding the door open for younger Indigenous entertainers as well. So it's definitely a huge honor for me to take the stage anytime I get the chance.
Well, and I know that there are a couple of younger Indigenous entertainers who you have very direct influence over, because you have two sons who are performers, right?
I have 4 sons in total, that I know of. Just kidding. No, I have 4 sons, and yes, my 2 oldest sons are sort of in front of the camera, and my 2 younger sons are behind the camera in the sort of construction and props and administration area. But my 2 oldest sons, my oldest son, Tyson, was in the Twilight movies, so he's one of the Wolfpack guys. And then my second oldest son, Todd.
Team Jacob.
Yeah. My second son, Todd, has his own web series called Folklords, with a Z at the end, and it's a sketch comedy show, and it's really biting Indigenous humor about what it's like to be Indigenous in North America and how we've been colonized and all. But it's a sketch comedy show. It's really funny, but it's go in there with a warning that you may feel a little awkward, but you're gonna laugh because they're really taking the situation of the state of the world and the state of Indigenous people really on the head right now. So I'm very proud of them. And yes, they get their sense of humor. I think it may come from me. I'm not sure. I wasn't always cracking jokes at home because, I had to help raise 4 of these little monsters, but no, they have their own sense of humor and their own careers and everything. And I'm just, I've held the door open just because I got stuck in it because I'm so fat. I got stuck in the door frame and they kind of whirled their ways around me.
So were you, when you were a little monster that someone else was raising, were you a funny guy then?
I think I was because there was a couple reasons for that. I'm the youngest of 5 children. So I'm the youngest. So you're always the youngest person. I find actually entertainers and actors and whatnot, generally about 90% of them are the youngest child in the family. And that means they're trying to always get attention because when you're youngest, no one cares about you anymore. Your parents, whatever. I've had to deal with all the skin knees and the
Been there, done that.
cuts. Yeah, been there, done that. This guy's not okay, whatever. It's gonna get better. Just sit in the tub. It'll fix itself. Right. We don't have clothes, so here's some hand-me-downs because whatever. We've already bought one set of clothes. So when you're younger, you're really trying to get that attention when you're the youngest person, I find. Anyway, so that was with me. Plus, I'm adopted. So I'm adopted into another family anyways. So getting even more attention was always on my mind. So I was always doing silly things, telling jokes, acting up. I was dancing at weddings a lot for some reason. I don't know why. When breakdancing hit, this is how old I am. When breakdancing first opened up, I grasped onto it, and I had the little piece of cardboard that I would take with me. Me and my buddies, my crew, we would break dance in the schoolyards and whatnot. And at every wedding, I would be dancing till all hours of the night. So, yeah, I was a performer at an early age.
I wish we could have you do a breakdancing impersonation, a breakdancing demonstration right now on the show, but I'm not going to put you on the spot to do that because it's Zoom. If we ever see you live at one of our conferences, I might throw down a piece of cardboard and see what we can get you to do.
Well, there would be breaking for sure. I'm not sure it'd be dancing, but definitely things would be breaking left and right. Yeah.
So I just want to remind those of you who are here with us live as we're recording that we can take questions from you in the chat. If you'd like to pose a question, it's very helpful if you write the word question in caps in front of it. It's a little easier for it to jump out at me as y'all are all dialoguing. And so we'll start asking some of your questions in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, Howie, I told you before the show that I am dying to expose our community to some of your celebrity impersonations because they are part of my favorite part of your routines. How did you learn that you could impersonate these celebrities?
I think it was early. Again, this all stems from my childhood, the way I entertain and the way I do shows. And the way I kind of grew up. I tell people that if you've ever seen a John Hughes movie, that's how Howie Miller grew up. I grew up in suburbia, upper middle class. I tell some people that, I'm whiter than you because of the way I talk, the way I act. I can have a DJ voice. Good morning, everybody. It's Howie Miller. We're in the AM. Traffic is slow grinding, but it's moving steadily. Weather is going to be in the high 70s today. So, hey, you don't have to wear your galoshes. So I can talk, and it was to get attention, to get people's attention, to look beyond, because initially I would worry that people are going to see me and think derogatory things about me or my race or anything like that. So to nip that in the bud, I would always be overperforming and trying to show them, hey, there's more than me than how I look, never judge a book by its covers. So impressions, and I'm going to be honest with you, not normally, but in the past, I would try to sugarcoat interviews and whatnot and just say, well, I was the class clown and I just started doing impressions. It actually came because I was sitting on the toilet. And if you've ever been in a washroom, any washroom in your house or whatever, they're echoey because there's not a lot of stuff on the walls in a washroom. So they're they're a little more echoey. Plus all the porcelain and the tub or the shower or whatever, and the toilet bowl itself, they're very echoey. So it's one room in your house. If you don't have a microphone set up and the headphones, it's the one place where you can hear your voice back. So you can hear what you sound like. So when you do an impression, it's like, oh, well, I've been doing that too high. I need to lower my voice if I want to do that certain voice. So that's kind of how I got started into it. And I really wanted to do something new when I started doing stand-up. I wanted to bring something new to the table. I didn't want to just do this sort of kind of stock, Indian jokes like, hey, I'm an Indian and this is how I talk, and bow and arrows and all this other things. I didn't want to go down that road 100%. I wanted to add some color and some flavor.
Was there an expectation from booking agents or audiences that you would do those kind of jokes?
I think I kind of, maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. I kind of went into it when, as soon as I hit the stage the first time, I was in Canada, we have a certain way that the Indigenous people talk. So as soon as I hit the stage, I kind of lowered it and I talk like that because our mouths are very closed because they're native language. We don't move our lips a lot. So we talk very, very down like this. So I went on stage and I talked like that when I first got on stage. And I could tell the audience, a room full of non-Indigenous people from Canada, they're like, oh, we got to listen to this. And then I would change it up and start talking how I normally talk and do impressions. And so they'd be like, hey, he doesn't sound like that. Oh, wow, this is amazing. It's like a circus show, That's how I went into it. I really wanted to show, hey, the happy slappy, I've got 5 minutes, so here's some fireworks type thing.
Who was the first celebrity that you learned to impersonate?
Actually, the very first celebrity I did on stage or in my act was Sean Connery. And for some reason, I don't know what it was about him. I just loved the James Bond movies when I was growing up. Not all the all the sexist material. It was more about the gadgets for me. Mm-hmm. So I would seriously be just sitting there on the couch watching him, James Bond or something, and I'd be like, all of a sudden my voice would change and I'd be like, well, this is how he talks. This is amazing that I can actually do this. You have to have a Scottish accent. And once you've got the Scottish accent, you just have to start slurring your S's a little bit. And you got to say shush and shoes and all these things. And it just comes to you naturally like that. So I started doing that. And people said, hey, that's really good. You sound a lot like him. So I tried to incorporate him in the act. And I never really could incorporate the impressions into my act when I first started out. I was like, here's Sean Connery working at McDonald's. Hey, can I take your order, please? Would you like a Big Mac? It just sounded forced until later on. Then I figured out, well, I could probably do something like this or this. And but yeah, Sean Connery was the first one I did.
Is there one that people ask for the most?
Yes, there's two actually. My Arnold Schwarzenegger. When I do impressions, actually, here's a little thing about impressions. I've always found that I feel kind of bad saying impression. I feel like I'm more mimicking the voice, because when I was growing up, my mother insisted on getting piano lessons for all her children. And I went to piano lessons I think I got to the third grade in piano lessons. But the lessons themselves, I didn't like. The music I loved. And later on in life, in my early teens, I found I could play the piano, but by listening, by ear. So if I could hear a tune, I could eventually figure it out on the piano by making it sound like what I was hearing. So the same thing with my voice, seeing an actor, if I watch them long enough, I can say, well, I can sound like that if I listen to them. So I'll be watching Michael Caine and all of a sudden I'm talking like this and hello, I'm Michael Caine because that's how he talks. This is how he talks now. So I'll talk like that. So it's just because I heard it and I want to make the sound come through me. Like La Bamba at karaoke. I can sing La Bamba like nobody's business. I don't speak a word of Spanish though. It's just, I'm repeating what I've heard and it sounds exactly like the La Bamba that we heard on the radio in the 80s there. So my impressions are the same thing. So when I do Arnold, it's Arnold as you hear him now. He's a little bit older, and he's still fantastic, and he does all this and the other thing there, and he's a little older now, so his voice isn't what it was, when he first started out there, and things like that, and he's not the governor anymore, and he doesn't have that same power, but he's got donkeys that he has breakfast with. He's got a little donkey. I don't know if you've seen this thing there. He's got a donkey in his house, and he does this, that, and the other thing with the donkey and his breakfast, and he bikes around in the backyard, and he still does this. Yeah, he kind of does that every now and then. So it's his voice, how he sounds now, because I'm getting older. And another one I get a lot is Christopher Walken, because it was one of these, again, sitting on the toilet, and I was thinking about, there's two movies that I was watching. There was Pulp Fiction, and there's Catch Me If You Can. I don't know if you've seen Catch Me If You Can. It's the one with Tom Hanks, and he plays the Abagnale guy who was a con artist, and his father was played by Christopher Walken. And in the scene in Catch Me If You Can, he does a speech about two mice in a bowl of cream, and basically what he's saying, one mouse churns the bowl of cream. He struggles so much it makes butter, and he gets out of the little jar. But I would always mix those movies up when I'm on stage. So I'd be like, two mice in a bowl of cream. One mouse dies dysentery. The other mouse, I shove up my ass. 5 years I had that mouse up my ass. Now, little man, I give the mouse to you. So you mix the movies up that you've been in, and then it's like the watch scene from Pulp Fiction. So I mean, I have fun with it.
Okay, so this is my last question about the impressions, unless about the mimicking, unless somebody else in the audience has more questions about that. Have you ever had the chance to do the impression in front of one of the celebrities that you impersonate?
I'm trying to think now if I did, because for some reason it popped in my head. Elvis. I did Elvis once, but it was like in a convention or whatever, and he could have been in the audience. I don't know. I believe he's still alive. But no, the only person I've actually met, but I didn't do the impression. Everyone asked me, "Did you do the voice?" Was William Shatner, Captain Kirk. I actually bought him an iced tea at one of the Montreal Just for Laugh festivals we have up here, and there was a big lineup at the bar, and the bartender was going crazy, and I felt this kind of bump in me, and I turn around, and it's William Shatner. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'm like, "No, it's okay." And I go, "Well, what do you have?" And he goes, "Iced tea." So the bartender came to me, and I go, "I'll get this, and I'll get an iced tea, please." So he gives me the iced tea, and I go, "Here you go." And he goes, "Thank you." And he leaves, and I'm like, "No, it's Captain Kirk. I just bought him iced tea." I never did the voice in front of him.
Now, I've seen you captain a starship in your demo reel. Audience, Howie's got a YouTube channel, and he's got some of his videos on there, including a demo reel. Tell us what it felt like for you as a fat Indigenous man to play this iconic white guy character. And was it from your sketch comedy show, from May Contain Nuts?
It's from Caution May Contain Nuts, and I'm not sure if you can see all of them in the States, because I know YouTube, I can't see some of the stuff. It always says, we can't play this from your region or whatever, but there's some stuff I'm sure that gets through. But it's called Caution May Contain Nuts. And my whole idea on that sketch show, because we were on an Indigenous channel, we have it up here in Canada called APTN, the Aboriginal People's Television Network, which I think they're going to have to change because apparently we're not calling ourselves Aboriginal anymore. I don't know who decides these things. Anyways, my whole point to that show, when I got that opportunity to be on that show and write for it, was to take different characters that I grew up with and different ideas and fun things, and make them specifically make them Indigenous. So little Indigenous kids, even little Indigenous chubby kids, could say, "Wow, I've never seen somebody do that before. That means I can do that. That means I can play that." Because, when you're like, for instance, an example, playing Star Wars growing up, I felt like I couldn't play Star Wars with my friends because there's no fat Native guys on Star Wars.
Right.
So who am I going to be, right? So it in my head, I was like, you know what? I want to show these little kids, these little Indigenous kids, if they're chubby, they can still captain a spaceship. I play a pirate on that show, and you guys can be pirates. I have the worst pirate name. I'm so lazy as a writer. My name is Captain Yar. That's how lazy I am. What's his name? Captain Yar. We'll just call him Captain Yar. And my captain, because I am doing my homage to Captain Kirk on our ship, because the production company went through the effort of making us an entire bridge that was almost identical to the original Star Trek TV show bridge, that I had to do my best homage to Captain Kirk. But because our copyright laws are different up in Canada, like in the States on SNL and all the other sketch shows, you guys can make fun of it, whoever you want. We can't. We have different rules and laws that we have to abide by. So I didn't even come up with a name for the captain. He's just the captain. So I was like, I'm not going to call him Captain Dirk or Captain, because they'll just come back to me and say, well, that's too close to Captain Kirk. And I'm like, well, what am I going to, well, he's just captain.
Right.
And I thought we were only going to do one sketch. We ended up doing like 2 seasons of about 20 different sketches. And the whole time I'm worried, like, what if they ask me my name? Because I don't have a name. He's the captain. He's just captain. So yeah, so that's how I got part of it. But that's originally how I wanted to do those roles, just to show chubby little Native kids that you can be, you always have to be the thin superhero looking guy to be on television or to have fun. You can be whatever size you want to be and whatever race you want to be in order to do these things. So that's really why I took advantage of that.
Are there other iconic characters that you would love to get a chance to put your spin on?
You know what? Doing that show, I got to do a lot of the ones that I was set out to do. Like we wanted to do my friend Sheldon Elter, the other Indigenous guy on the show. He was Woody Allen and he was writing, and I was Alfred Hitchcock. And I was telling him what to write. So it's good evening. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about this. So I was doing all that stuff. And I was like, well, okay, I get to do that. And I get to play a captain, and I get to play a clown, like this insane clown. I get to play a space captain. Like, what else is there for me to do, right? I mean, other than doing some sort of Shakespeare, I was tentatively asked, somebody wanted me to do King Lear once, but they were doing an Indigenous version of it, but the timing and then COVID hit, and I was like, well, I can't do that anymore. So hopefully something a little more serious will come down the pipe, and I'd love to do that.
I listened to an interview with you and your son on CBC, and one of the things that you all talked about was the difference between punching up and punching down in comedy. How have you navigated that as a professional comedian in this time where we know there are some major comedians in the headlines right now for the sort of the idea of cancel culture versus freedom of speech and things like that? How have you navigated those things in your career?
I just try to be funny. My whole point is try to make people laugh. And when it comes to, cancel culture or punching down, I try to stay away from that. I've always tried to stay away from it, but to a point of when I first started out, I was really derogatory towards myself. And and ultimately towards Indigenous people. And that's when I first started out, when I was young, and I really didn't know the effect I was going to have on myself or the people around me. And later on, I realized, you know what, I should be I have an opportunity and a responsibility here. So I should take advantage of that and write a little more cleaner, and try to be a little more broad scoped and try to kind of educate as I'm doing my job. So letting people in, non-Indigenous people in, and letting them know that there's still issues going on with racism right now. I'm not going to beat you about over the head with them, but I'm going to make light of it in a way where you're going to realize that's funny, but he's also shown me that that problem still exists. It's still out there. So we should do something about it. So my children, God bless them, they have taken their own roads around on this. And I'm so proud of them because they've educated themselves in such a way, and they're still educating themselves every day about Indigenous history and culture and stuff. And I'm slowly catching up because I'm an older person, and it wasn't, I'm adopted, so I lost all that. But they're trying to get it back, and they're trying to influence in their own ways, and they're doing a great job of it. I'm really proud of it because it's the younger generation that has all this weight on them and the responsibility more than I do. But I still try to do the best I can.
How do you handle it when folks do things that are culturally sensitive to First Nations people or to Indigenous people anywhere, and you have an opportunity in real time to have that teachable moment with them? Like, say when we had reached out to you, I had said, we're going to have you on our webinar. And before we have the webinar, you and I should have a little powwow to talk about right? What we've done.
Yeah, exactly. This is actually real situations, and I make fun of them. And I've actually made a sketch about this. Actually, it was my wife who wrote the sketch, who came up with the idea. And I said, well, just write that down. If you write it down, I'll write it as the sketch, and then you'll get the writing credit for it, and then maybe a little extra money. So that's how we worked it, because she had this Jen. And so she, the idea was, she was at work, and she works in sort of an office administrative sort of type situation. So somebody did say that. So, well, after lunch, we're going to have a powwow in the meeting room. And she stopped them and said, and what you would normally say to educate somebody is, excuse me, you're using that incorrectly. But since I've rubbed off on her so much, she did it in a humorous way. She said, oh, so we're going to sit at a meeting place in the outdoors and light fires and dance and rejoice and talk about our differences because we haven't, we're going to meet like this. She's basically describing what a powwow actually is.
Right.
And the guy was like, what do you mean? Well, that's what a powwow is. You said we were going to have a powwow. And then he realized, oh, right. I'm sorry. That was insensitive. She's not Indigenous, but everyone knows that her children and I'm Indigenous, because actually when Tyson, my son, got the Twilight part, it was world news in our universe. So, but yeah, people get taken aback for a second, and then they go, you know what? That was insensitive. You're right. I changed my mind. We are not having a powwow. We are going to have a meeting and discuss whatever we need to discuss at hand. So when you can correct somebody without, necessarily beating them over the head with it and getting all negative, because being negative, fighting negative with negative doesn't really work. So if you can make light of it and bring it in, just, calmly bring it in, like, you're low man on the totem pole. Yes, awesome. I'm the strongest person. I'm holding everything up. A lot of people don't realize that when they say that, you're low man on the totem pole. They're assuming that you don't know anything. No, you're the strongest person. You're the base. I run shit and it's all mine. So you're all, I run everything. That's what low man on the totem pole means. So it's just how you word things and how you approach them, I think. And if you approach things in a positive way, then your message will become a positive message. So, or I try anyways.
Yeah. I mean, and you can always fall back on doing it in Schwarzenegger's voice too.
Exactly. You're so fantastic. I'm no man on the totem pole. I'm the strongest man ever.
Audience, if you have questions, we still have time for a few more questions for Howie. What's coming up next for you?
I think I was going to take a year off and lock myself in my little apartment and do nothing and stay away from everybody, but that's already been done. So things are slowly getting back to normal. Last year I didn't have a single Christmas show, and any comedians or entertainers, and that goes like hypnotists and magicians and all these people, DJs and whatnot, that rely on these Christmas parties for their bread and butter. I will say that 80% of my yearly annual income comes from November to mid-January. It's all Christmas related.
Through the corporate work that you do.
The corporate comedy scene. Because companies will have their Christmas party and then they have an entertainer. So that's where seriously I was making about 80% of my yearly income. That all went away last year. And this year it's slowly coming back. And, trying to figure out what people's budgets are, what they're willing to spend, and having to, take a pay cut myself, but still wanting to perform, because ultimately I want to perform. I love doing my job. When I love performing, then I'll stop doing it, because I don't need to sit in an airport. I don't need to sit in Minneapolis airport and, spend money at the giant mall in the airport and watch the tram train go by for 4 days. I don't need to do that. I love doing it because it leads to a nice performance and meeting new people and having a wonderful time. So when I stop loving it, then I'll stop doing it. But yeah, slowly there's shows this year. There's a handful of them. You'd always like more. But thanks to Zoom, I'm actually doing a couple of Zoom shows this year. Last year, I think I did 1 or 2 in the whole sort of span of the Christmas season. And I think I have about 4 or 5.
How are they different? How are the Zoom shows? Obviously, you don't have a live audience, but what does that mean to you?
Okay, well, let me explain. When we first got into lockdown up in Canada, it was last springtime, in April, I think it was, or maybe later, or May. We locked down, and I was like, oh my God, we're all locked down. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And people were getting upset and panicking. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw out a free Facebook live show. I'm going to do my whole act on Facebook, and usually my act is about an hour 10 minutes. So I'm going to do my whole act on a free Facebook show. I'm going to advertise it, and this Friday it'll be Howie Miller at 7 p.m. Central, free Facebook comedy show. And I didn't know what I was going to do, so I turned on my cameras and started doing my act and just talked through my whole act, just did my jokes, and I didn't pause to say this is where normal people laugh. I just talked. And I said, good night. Hey, thanks, everybody. That was my whole act. And I looked down at the clock, and it was 33 minutes. So without the laughter and all the interaction that you do on stage, there's about half an hour that's gone. I was like, oh my God, I need to write more material. So the Zoom shows, I don't have, like right now, it's weird. I'm sitting in kind of my little cave where I have my my equipment set up. Yeah. I'm looking at my camera, but I'm looking at the camera. I don't have to look at the camera. I can look down at my screen and see people's faces if I wanted to, but I'm looking at the camera. So I'm sitting here by myself, looking at a camera, a little camera lens, just to make you feel more comfortable, to make it look like I'm actually speaking to you personally, and I'm doing my act, and I'm doing all the impressions and these, that, the other thing. It's fantastic. And I do that for about an hour. And then I do a little question period afterwards. That takes up the kind of interaction that you would miss on stage. Like, hey, do you got a question? Like, did you want to talk about something? Or did you comment? Do you have the same experience, when you were growing up, type thing? So I'll do about 45 minutes and about 15 minutes of interaction. And then that's how I do my Zoom comedy shows. So it's different, but you gotta roll with what the world gives you. So that's what I'm trying to do.
So, but you didn't have Q&A when you had your comedy shows before, right? So like, what's the most interesting / surprising / weird question that you've been asked since you started doing Q&A with your audiences?
This came up. What was it? I think it just had something to do with, are you wearing pants? Are you wearing pants? And I'll be like, honestly, no. I'm wearing my gig shirt and shorts. I'm wearing shorts. Because why would I wear pants? There's no point in me wearing pants right now. I'm sitting down in an office type. Why would you wear pants? I'm going to tell you, y'all almost got flashed at the beginning of this.
I'm going to tell you how y'all almost got flashed before we let the audience in, because I was also sitting around not wearing pants. And then and then I realized, I had to stand up for something, and almost introduced a whole different side of the NAAFA chair to everyone.
Yep.
What's the most freeing thing, besides not wearing pants, about being able to work in digital space?
I did a show just a couple weeks ago, and it was on the east side of the country. So I don't know if you guys know where Newfoundland is. It's an island in Canada that's on the east coast. So if you look at New York and you go above there's Newfoundland. We call them Newfies. I think that might be derogatory, so don't call them Newfies. I don't think they like that. Anyways, but it was for Newfoundland, and it was they were having a meeting during the day. So it was 11 o'clock their time, 7 a.m. my time. So I slept, rolled out of bed, had my setup from the night before, turned on my computer, did this, hit the Zoom meeting. Good morning, everybody. I'm Howie Miller. How are you? And I just did this. I literally rolled out of bed, rolled into this shirt, wearing shorts, hadn't even had my morning pee, and just did their Zoom comedy show. So that's how digital space works, I guess.
Well, it's been one of the benefits for us as well. I mean, we started these webinars long before the pandemic, but we really ramped them up during pandemic times because we knew there were folks at home and looking for things to do and looking for ways to connect. And it has meant that we could, we could be with people and be in community with people who wouldn't have been able to travel to our national conference or don't have, fat activist community around them. Where they live. What's something, and we do get viewers of these from all over the world, especially when we put them up on YouTube later. What is something that you would want folks who don't know anything about Cree culture, Indigenous life in Canada, what it means to be First Nations, like, here's your moment that, to put Canada in the spotlight for all those global viewers. What's the one thing or some of the most important things that you wish more people knew about your lived experience and your identity?
Indigenous people of Canada are survivors. We are survivors. We're still surviving today, even though some of us believe that and I'm actually part of the people in this sort of belief that the cultural genocide is still happening. But we're survivors. The strength that the Indigenous people have in Canada is unfathomable. You can't even measure it because we are so strong through all the adversity that we've gone through and that we're still going through. There's some parts of Canada that don't have clean drinking water. Now, you always think that you're in a city and this is great. I've got everything. I've got toilet paper. I've got movies. I can do whatever I want. I got skip the dishes. But then somebody who has a cousin that lives in an area that doesn't have clean drinking water. Well, my brain just goes to those things you used to see on, send money to Africa because these kids don't have drinking water. Well, I'm related to people that don't have clean drinking water. But through all that, we still have a sense of humor and we're surviving and we are getting stronger every day. Like I said, the Indigenous children of Canada and even North America are so strong. And they're so smart, and they're working with all the systems that we have, the education systems, all the technology that I don't understand, that they are understanding and grasping. It's amazing to see. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of stuff to be done culturally in the governments and whatnot. And that's something that, I don't even know where to begin, but there's a generation coming up behind me that knows exactly what to do. So I just want people to know that the Indigenous people of Canada are strong survivors and we're not going anywhere.
Howie, is there anything I didn't ask you about today that you want to tell us about?
One thing that I really want to talk about that's been bothering me for the last little while is when I'm doing the Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. I'm going to watch it now. How do you sign language the Arnold Schwarzenegger impression? It's fantastic to watch it because now she has to do it herself. It's fantastic. I'll be back. Okay, I just wanted to see the sign lady do that. That's awesome. I've never seen an impression done in sign language. That's amazing.
Thank you, Dee. We have an exceptional support from Pro Bono ASL. They are really unique as as an ASL interpreting organization. They have just so I look at them in comparison to some of the other organizations and just the broad diversity of identities and representation that they have within their staff, and the talent and energy that they bring to working with us, and I assume working with everyone they work with, is really just phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about them. You should all support Pro Bono ASL. And anything else, Howie? Any final thoughts from you?
No, it was a huge honor to be a part of this. I really appreciate you asking me and thinking about me. I don't plan on losing weight. I'm 50 years old. Well, I'm almost 50. And I the only thing I did during COVID, a lot of people were, educating themselves and learning a new craft or learning a new skill or learning to play the piano. I went out and got type 2 diabetes. So thanks, Skip the Dishes. Do you have Skip the Dishes down there? Does that make sense?
I don't know what Skip the Dishes is.
It's a food service. It's an app on your phone, and it's Uber Eats or Skip the Dishes, and restaurants like you dial in and say, okay, I want KFC, so I want a whole bunch of chicken delivered to my house, and it's not like
We have
pizza delivery.
DoorDash.
That's the exact same thing then. Yeah, we have DoorDash too. So, but it made sitting in my underwear doing Zoom shows really easy not to care. Like, okay, well, I'm just gonna get lunch. I'm just gonna order lunch then. What do I want? A whole bunch of Chinese food. That's what I'm gonna have for lunch. And then I went for a checkup, and they say, oh, by the way, you have type 2 diabetes. I'm like, great, damn it, not even one. I couldn't even get number one. I had to settle for 2. What a loser.
Well, I will give a teachable moment here too about type 2 diabetes and why people think that the response to that has to be weight loss. If you are another person like Howie who's been diagnosed with that recently and you are worried about that, there's a great resource called HAES Health Sheets, HAES Health Sheets, that is put together by activist Regan Chastain and 2 of her colleagues, where they take, any medical diagnoses that you might get where the first assumption is that your response should be to lose weight, and they talk to you about the other things that you can be doing, because we all know what the success rates of quote unquote success rates of weight loss can be for everybody. So Howie, you take a look at that and you keep skipping the dishes as you see fit in your own life.
I'm actually, every time I go, I just went to the doctor recently and my cholesterol keeps getting lower, and it's actually starting to piss my doctor off a little bit, because he's like, look, you're fat. You eat KFC and Pepsi. You have type 2. Why is your cholesterol? It's lower than mine. I'm like, whatever. It's just because I'm awesome, because I'm a sexy beast.
That's it. I think we should end on Sexy Beast. Thank you so much, Howie, for joining us today. We're so excited to have you and get to know you and bring you into the NAAFA community and stay connected with you. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for the laughs. We all need them at these times. Again, thank you, Pro Bono ASL, for interpreting today. And thank you to everyone who joined us live today. Once again, these webinars are offered as a free resource to the community through the generous support of donors and contributors to NAAFA's programming. You can do that at naafa.org/donate at any time of the year. And of course, we have Giving Tuesday coming up, which will benefit the Paul Ahrensberger Scholarship Fund for medical research that is in the spirit of health at every size. So thank you once again. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another NAAFA webinar. Until then, follow us at NAAFA Official on your favorite social media, and we'll see you next time. Big fat hugs, everyone. Take care.